Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for supporting our show each week. Since the 90s, I've been on and off the show, but for the last 5 years, we've been constantly broadcasting. Uh, Today, don't forget that our call-in number is 317-239-1310 for the people in Indianapolis. Also, you could watch us live on Facebook, uh, Instagram, and also you'll be able to see us on Twitter. Today, we're always blessed to have our superstar panel of lawyers. John Sweeney, one of the top trial lawyers in America, will be joining us today. Milton Grimes, Vanita Banks, all-star cast of superstar lawyers, real trial lawyers who actually fight every day for victims and consumers in courtrooms all across the country. But we've had so many fascinating news stories this week until we had to cover some of the big news stories that are going to have significant legal consequence. We have this week we had a phenomenal debate, and I have Attorney Sweeney give a commentary because he's from California, and his AG Kamala Harris, I thought did an exceptional job in terms of the debate. There's a couple of things I thought that should have given a knockout blow, but they were saying that women that do debates have to do a different type standard, and but she was made us all proud. Attorney Sweeney, what do you think about that debate?
Oh, I thought she was fabulous. The one thing that stood out, jokingly or with some humor here, is that the fly decided to land on the head of Pence and not Kamala Harris. No, but she was great. She was poised. She gave substantive answers. She was firm with Pence when he talked over her. She would interrupt him and say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking here," and then she'd glare at him. And to show you how strong she was, her showing was, Trump during the week started attacking her. Started saying that she's a monster, she's a communist, and those are horrible things to say. But you don't say those things unless somebody is a threat. So all in all, I thought she did a great job, an outstanding job. And there was one question that both sides, or Democratic side, left hanging, and that was the issue of whether or not the Democrats were going to stack the bench, the Supreme Court bench, and that issue, that means that there will no longer be 9 justices. There may be 11 justices, or that's what they were referring to when they were talking about stacking the bench. And there was no real answer to that. So very, very interesting, because it dovetails into the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation. If she's confirmed, and then that is a swing vote, and conservatives have majority, they can run roughshod over civil liberties of Americans for years and years to come, because they're all so young, for at least 15, 20, 25 years. So but getting back to the original question, Nathaniel, I thought Kamala Harris did a great job. They tried to land punches at every blow, and she parried and ducked every punch. She's tremendously qualified. She was a district attorney, the district attorney of San Francisco, and then the attorney general of the state of California, and then, of course, United States Senator from California. She did a great job.
Yeah, I thought that one thing that is abundantly clear, they're going full steam ahead with Amy Barrett confirmation. Let's just talk about historically why that's such a big deal. The most qualified candidate, one of the most qualified in the history of the circuit court, would have been a local person of Indianapolis, former Justice Myra Selby. She was nominated in 2014 by then President Obama to serve on the 7th Circuit. Despite the fact that there was no candidate with credentials, even Amy Barrett credentials fall far short than Myra Selby to be a judge on the 7th Circuit. Mitch McConnell never gave her a hearing. 2 years, no hearing. The Democrats lost control of the Senate, and he stopped all of the President Obama nominees, about 128 of them. About, I think it was like 38 African Americans or something. I don't remember exact numbers, but it was a large number of African American judges that never got a hearing, never got confirmation vote. And so what occurred is that when Trump became president, all those vacancies got filled immediately by less qualified candidates in most people's opinion. And the net result is that we've stacked the court with these Trump nominees, and the American Bar Association issued opinion that most were unqualified. They had one candidate, for example, from Louisiana who had never been to court. I was watching not Louisiana, but I was watching Senator Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana, do an interrogation of this one judicial candidate, Attorney Sweeney, and the person had never been in court, never been lead on any case, never been a lead even on a deposition, and was a federal judge nominee. It was insulting. And so the point is that this election is probably the most consequential because Judge Barrett was on the Day versus Wooten case, and basically on that decision, it's the worst since Plessy versus Ferguson. That case basically say that you could torture teenage black suspect and kill them, and there's no liability. It's an insulting opinion in my mind. Hopefully the Supreme Court, which Barrett is going to, will revisit the idea of qualified immunity. The qualified immunity defense actually act as a shield that allows law enforcement to murder people and get away with it, I think. And so I'm really upset about that opinion, and so we're gonna go full steam ahead. But the second issue, though, is the condition of Trump. I thought of each week he's done something more outrageous than the other one. And so apparently it wasn't fake news that I'm not sure yet whether or not he actually had COVID or not, but they said he did. Then he had treatment that I've never seen anybody in America have before. And a few days later, he say he's fine. I mean, but I do know that steroid injection he got is a very expensive process. You know, the Lance Armstrongs, they give you incredible energy. People that were in like stage 4 cancer, they would get that shot because they have no energy, and they give you energy. But I was wondering, when you take those high doses of steroid, how does it affect your mental thought process? You know, I was concerned about that. You know, when a guy who has a button on the nuclear trigger, and also it seemed like to me that not wearing a mask, and though you have the virus, is a reckless act. I mean, we've had, Attorney Sweeney, we've had people prosecuted who transmitted venereal disease to other people, like AIDS and things like that. This condition is just as deadly as anything I've ever seen. And, I don't understand it. I mean, how a national leader could be so irresponsible.
Yeah, well, nothing surprises me with this guy anymore. He clearly only thinks of himself. He seems to be without a soul. And anybody who could usurp the great services of Walter Reed Army Hospital, with all of their great doctors and all those veterans who are over the years have sought treatment for injuries, how a president who doesn't pay any taxes can usurp those services of a taxpayer supported hospital is beyond me. He has no soul. I don't believe a word that comes out of the White House. We know that he is a serial habitual liar, that he is doing horribly in the polls. He is trying to do everything to show that he is strong and that he is going to be back out on the campaign trail. The health of his constituents be damned. He doesn't care. He's already infected a good portion of the White House staff. and you don't see them back at work, do you? But it's Trump who is back at work. I don't believe a word that he says. I think he's probably still contagious, and to go out and to do another one of those live events like he says he's going to do today or tomorrow is absolutely reprehensible, irresponsible, but it's consistent with everything that he's done in the 4 years that he has been president.
One of the other issues that came up that we had before the show, we started talking about this dog whistle that he's done, stand down, stand back, or whatever he said to these white supremacists. We now found out that it's having some severe consequence. And I was reading in shock at the level of this terrorist group that plan on attacking law enforcement, kidnapping the governor, become serial murderers. I mean, it's just shocking to me that we're in America now, and we have a terrorist group now planning to overthrow the state of Michigan. Did you follow that story this week?
Oh yeah, I did, with great interest. I want all the viewers to know that when this white supremacist group showed up a couple of months ago at the state capitol there in Lansing, that President Trump tweeted out, good thoughts and kudos and to them, and then they end up getting arrested the other day, like you saw. It's absolutely horrible, and this could have never come to fruition, this type of group, without the president impliedly consenting to their existence. And dog whistling, like you said, to them, it could have never happened. And there are other groups planning other things. African Americans have been threatened. I think it was the 4th of July, where in Georgia, a white militia group or the Ku Klux Klan said that just unsolicited, we're going to start shooting blacks at 8 o'clock on the 4th of July, I think it was, and just intimidating. The same stuff that's been going on since the Night Riders and during Reconstruction. So, but this is all rearing its ugly head during the time of this clearly racist president.
Well, let me ask you something. I noticed that in some of these circumstances, there's been a response by a black group of militia. What's going on with that group?
Yeah, when I was first on your show about 3 months ago, Nathaniel, I told you this was at a time that right after the Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd killings, and there was another one in there that really disturbed Black America. I said that maybe it's time for a rebirth of something like the Black Panther Party. Now, I understand, I'm a lawyer, I work for the system, I don't condone violence at all. But remember that the Panther Party was the Panther Party for self-defense. It was a reaction in Oakland, California to police harassment way back in the 1960s. And it seems like nothing has changed, with this, at the time that I mentioned them, these three real high-profile killings of African-American men. So there's this group called the NFAC, the Not Expletive, Not Messing Around Council. You can fill in what the F means. But anyway, they are a black militia group that in their thing, they said we aren't about marching, we aren't about singing songs like "We Shall Overcome." They are a militia group, and I thought it was very interesting because when these Klansmen threatened to kill blacks on the 4th of July, just shooting unsolicited black people, they marched. That is, the NFAC marched to Stone Mountain in Georgia, and you can just Google NFAC and watch 2,000 black-clad, heavily armed African Americans marching, and they had a permit. They don't march. They were actually defending the black community and sending out a message. Do you know that not one Klansman showed up? Not one Klansman. And during all these proposed Klan rallies and white militia rallies, when the NFAC says they're going to show up, none of these militias show up because they're very small. These militias, they show up maybe 20 strong or 10 strong or whatever. There are thousands of people who are members of this black militia group. So I thought it was interesting. And understand, I work within the system. I work in within the court system. Kamala Harris and people like Maxine Waters and other African American politicians work within the system, the legislative system. Barack Obama worked within the executive branch of the government. Thurgood Marshall worked within the judicial branch of the government. But with that said, there are still some of these white militia groups who need to be intimidated. And someone like even a Barack Obama saying, put down your arms, that's not a correct thing to do. Do not intimidate blacks. They're going to do it because they know that Barack Obama is not going to order the army to stop him or doesn't have the power. All they can do is investigate them, and the Justice Department investigate them, but we know how far that goes. So I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was it acted as a deterrent to these white militants.
Well, what we've seen is a radical departure from norms. I've watched that these militia groups took over the state capitol, and I was thinking to myself, that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. In our state, for example, you're not allowed to bring weapons in any public building. We have metal detectors, we have security, armed security, and because they recognize that before this pandemic, we Americans have a short historical background and we forget things. But we were having a mass shooting about 5 times each week in America before this pandemic. We saw a guy in Vegas try to take out over 500 people with automatic weapons. So we've seen these mass killings repeatedly over and over again. Then the pandemic hit, and then we had social separation, lockdowns, and then all of a sudden the mass shooting ceased only because we didn't have masses anymore. Well, I was disturbed, quite frankly, that the state of Michigan allowed these militia groups to bring into the state capitol automatic weapons doing a government function. I thought it was dangerous. I thought it was ill-conceived. And the idea that the Republican-led legislator thought that was okay is idiotic. I think that that's a dangerous precedent. If they were allowed these, what amount to domestic terrorists to take control of a government function, we're not a democracy anymore. I mean,
No.
That's what communist regimes do. I mean, this is so far-fetched until I wish that the people in Michigan that are listening will realize how abnormal that is to have these folks come to your state capitol with automatic weapons. With the history of this violence in our country, with so many people have been killed, the fact that you allow them, you're inviting a process that could lead to mass killing. And just think how ridiculous it is. They got automatic weapons. These police people got pistols. There's no match for people with automatic assault rifles. Automatic assault rifles are used for one thing: mass killings. Those pistols, they don't have the range, nor the velocity, nor the cartridge ability. You could have these magazine clipped with these weapons, and I don't know, you could have up to 150 bullets in some of these magazines that they have. And so my concern was that this conduct was allowed to continue. And then, as you recall, Attorney Sweeney, the President of the United States seemed like he was encouraging that. I saw the Governor Whitmer was on TV, and I was thinking to myself, this is a sad day in America. And even people that are supporting the president have to realize that this is abnormal behavior. I don't get it.
It's absolutely abnormal for Americans' behavior. But Nathaniel, just look at the eroding of democracy under Trump. Remember 3 years ago when he wanted to have a military parade like those strong men in the Soviet bloc countries, with tanks rolling down the street, with planes flying overhead, and soldiers marching. This guy, he thinks he's one of these strong men. One of these like the Belarusian leader, I forget his name, who got out of his helicopter with an AK-47 as intimidation, and his citizens are trying to assassinate him. This president is doing everything to mimic these strong men. He embraces Putin. He goes and meets with Kim Jong-il. He's now a fan of this Brazilian president, who is a strong man down there in Brazil, and has taken over that country. So this is all of his present behavior is part and parcel with that desire to be a strong man. And what it is it's amazing how America has devolved, has just disintegrated democracy within our country in 4 short years. It's absolutely amazing. We're living through this. There's nobody alive from the who was an adult in the 1930s in the Weimar Republic of Germany, when there was poverty and political discord, and that country allowed a person like Hitler to rise, and through a series of moves, he becomes the leader of the country, and it just crept up, and fascism spread throughout Italy, and Mussolini takes power, and it just spread. It spread rapidly. See, history repeats itself. There are only a certain amount of patterns, and one of the good things about growing old is you have the wisdom of time to look back on things, and you read things. And I was a history major at USC, and so I have a great appreciation for history. And the same thing is happening here in this country. The 6 million Jewish people, souls who were murdered during the Nazi regime, I don't put it past that happening to minorities in America. And the only difference now, the only saving grace now, is that we have a history of slavery and Jim Crow, living under Jim Crow and discrimination. And you know what? We're not going to let that happen. That's why a group like the Black Militia Group rose up not as an offensive, but a defensive. And do you know, Nathaniel, that after Trump was elected, that the largest amount of new gun owners was African Americans. They bought guns. And now African Americans are snapping up guns at a far, far greater rate than whites. Why? Because they see it coming. We see it coming. It's coming. I mean, the intimidation, the killing of black people. And look at where we are now, Nathaniel. The country was indignant in a visceral response to the killing of George Floyd. Was everybody just took to the streets. Look at where we are now. Just 3 months later, everything has calmed down. The guy walks out of jail with $1 million bond this week, and nobody knew it. He slipped off into the darkness at night. He didn't have that money to get out. Where do you think he got that money? From white supporters, white supremacists, and so if white citizens who are not militia people, who are good, decent people, Republicans and Democrats, use your voices. Use your voices, because we are in very perilous times, Nathaniel.
Well, you know what? That's an excellent point you just made, Attorney. One of the things that disturbed me, and in terms of news of the day, you had this teenager that murdered those people in Wisconsin, and was that Missouri? We shot the two people a couple weeks ago. I was watching that story unfold. And the whole point of this is that the teenager that murdered those folks looked like they raised over $500,000 for his defense. You know, overnight, you got thousands of dollars pouring in for a defense fund for a serial killer, a guy who killed people with an assault rifle. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking that this is just abnormal. If people think that this is okay for somebody to shoot unarmed people, then we've lost our way. You know, that's not a good thing. And when we say that we're a country of laws and order, that's just what you do in communist regime. That's what you do in regimes that are run by dictators. But you don't do that type of things in this country. This country, we're the United States. We're all in this together. We live or die as a unit. So we can't start taking out American citizens without any consequence. And that's something that that's one boundary that we should never cross. And I think that we have a strong minority of people now in our country have gone too far with this issue, that it's okay, these killings, but it needs to stop.
You know, Nathaniel, you're absolutely right. But unfortunately, this has always been the case against African Americans. The lynchings, you know, the history of slavery and African Americans being nothing but chattel, not full human beings. And look at you mentioned these two white guys who killed blacks recently without any provocation, and all this money was raised pretty quickly for their defense. There's this, in Charleston, South Carolina, during the Obama administration, this young man named Dylan Roof went into the historic Emmanuel AME Church, and that church is extremely historic. Let me just give you a little background on it before I make my point. That church was founded by Reverend Morris Brown and Denmark Vesey. And Denmark Vesey hatched a slave insurrection in the or the early 1800s in Charleston, South Carolina. Well, the authorities found out about him, the insurrection, and they lynched him, hung him in public, and hung a few co-conspirators. And you know what they did, Nathaniel? They burned down the famous Emmanuel AME there in Charleston, South Carolina. They burned it to the ground because that was the church that he founded. There always has been this history of violence against that church. So it was no accident. Oh, and by the way, before I say this, make my point on Dylan Roof, the authorities, white authorities in Charleston, South Carolina, vowed that we are never going to let the slaves even think about an insurrection anymore. We have to be prepared. So you know what they did, Nathaniel? They built what is called the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. It marked the militarization of the South. Everything was genteel back then. But they say we need an armory in case blacks rise up against us. We have to be prepared. And so they built this citadel, and they had the cannons pointed. And guess what direction, Nathaniel? At Emmanuel AME Church, which had been rebuilt at that time. And they pointed it, and Emmanuel AME is just about 2 blocks from the Citadel. And the Citadel in 1854, I believe it was, became a military college. And it's still in existence to this day, the Citadel in South Carolina. So it wasn't any accident that Dylan Roof chose Emmanuel AME to do his thing, where he goes in with a backpack. He says he's having trouble in his life and he needs prayer. And Reverend Clemente Pinckney was leading his congregation in their Wednesday night, I think it was, a Bible study. And they went to pray, and they all bowed their heads and held hands together. And Dylan Roof went into his backpack and took out his semi-automatic pistol and executed 7 souls. And the reason why I brought that up, Nathaniel, do you know that for his legal defense, within about a month or so, they had raised several $100,000 from these races. So they're out there, Nathaniel. They're out there. I'm not surprised at all that this killer of George Floyd walked out of jail with $1 million bail. But anyway, they're out there. They've always been out there against African Americans.
Okay, let's go to the line, producer. Caller, you have a question for us? Is there a comment?
Hello, Brother Nathan. Brother,
Hey, can you speak up a little bit?
Brother, boy, that most folks don't know that history of the Citadel. I knew that, but a lot of folks didn't know that. He's got some spectacular history, our story, we call it. No, sir, our story you just put down there about that Citadel. And a lot of folks don't know that. Haven't been to the Carolinas, you learn that stuff like that when you go down through it. That's why travel is so important. And I applaud anybody. Instead of buying Michael Jordans, if you are that person, or if you're a person that's buying the Rock Revival jeans, they're expensive jeans, or Robin jeans, Nate, those are expensive jeans. Take your people and go and travel and do some traveling. It will open your eyes and go to his places where you know your historic landmarks and history. I've talked to many people who've never even been to Memphis and been into the Lorraine Hotel, the Civil Rights Museum there. That will blow you away. Especially looking at the shell casing that killed Martin Luther King. That thing was huge. But going back to these domestic terrorist groups, which they are, they're not militias. If you look at the definition of what a militia was, it was used to aid and assist the military or the government against foreign invaders. They're not militias. They're domestic terrorists. And I don't understand why. First, I'll leave you with this legal question. Maybe you guys can answer. I don't understand how they were able to go in a state property, like Nathaniel Lee, Attorney Lee said, with arms. Being an ex-military veteran, you couldn't go in federal property as a military guy. You had to check your gun in unless you was an MP. Unless you was an MP, that's the only people that can go into a federal building. So I don't even know how they were allowed to do that. But Nate, I would ask you and Attorney Grimes, where's the Patriot Act at? Why come a lot of these groups can't be called enemy combatants under the Patriot Act? I haven't heard the Patriot Act is used in a long time, and I was wondering, could that be used against these as enemy combatants? They are definitely. If you go to what Attorney Grimes said about the definition that they don't like the government or what the government stands for, then it seems to me that they would be declared an enemy combatant. They could be sent to Guantanamo without any rights, and I guarantee you that probably will stop a lot of that behavior. What do you think about that? And then also, Attorney Grimes, throw that Mulford Act in there too. How Ronald Reagan tried to stop blacks from even owning guns in California with that Mulford Act. But Patriot Act for these domestic terrorism, and then throw a little bit of history in about that Mulford Act if you can. Very important stuff. Thank you.
Well, he made a very good point. Just very briefly, our caller, Imhotep, raised a good point. The Patriot Act that I recall was legislation that came in under George Bush, and basically there was federal legislation to protect American citizens from domestic terrorism. Now, the problem we have is that we have the Attorney General that is complicit with this crazy stuff the president is doing. So the U.S. Attorney's Office, which used to be a model legal organization, has become a private law firm for a lawless president. So to answer that, I don't have any confidence currently with the current Justice Department leadership. The lawyers that worked there for years that I've known been honorable people, men and women, that was outstanding lawyers, but I don't sense that leadership today. And so I don't see any enforcement. You got to remember, the FBI director has been at odds with the president. And I was surprised that he hasn't been terminated by now. And so they intercepted this terrorist organization, but I didn't follow exactly what they were charged with. I don't remember the militia group. Do you recall, Attorney Sweeney, the one in Michigan?
No, I do not know what they were actually charged with. I know it was conspiracy to kidnap. I know that. But let me answer the caller's question. By the way, this is John Sweeney. Milton Grimes was not with us today. He kept calling me Milton Grimes. John Sweeney out in Los Angeles. But anyway, the caller said that he didn't understand why they could go into the state capitol with weapons. Now, my understanding is they did not actually go inside the Capitol. They went on the steps of the Capitol with weapons. I don't think that anyone would let them inside through metal detectors with weapons. But I want to know, where was the indignation of white America or the majority of America when we saw these images? You know, is day-to-day life that rough in America that we can't take the time and muster the energy to shout down these groups and to call law enforcement to the carpet for allowing this type of thing to happen? I mean, the country is spiraling out of control. You know, although I'm an African American man and I'm a liberal African American man, but still, and I want to see change. But still, this is my country. You know, we built this country, African Americans, and we don't want to see it fall apart. We want to see it change, and for it to live up to its creed that all men are created equal. And that's why my background, my virtual background, if you're watching on TV, is a picture that I took at the monument in Washington, D.C. of Martin Luther King. You know, it really, really just there should be a call to action. If what has happened in the last year, within this last 6 months within this country, since the pandemic started, is not a call to action for this country, I fear for my country, and we will see if the majority of people react on November 3rd. Is it the election is the 3rd? Is it 2nd or 3rd, Nathaniel?
It's Tuesday, first Tuesday in November. Hold on one second.
Which is I think it's the 3rd. But anyway, it's
November the 3rd. You're correct.
Yeah, November 3rd. If that's, we'll see if America is awakened by all that has happened. It's just to answer the question and the concerns of the caller. I hear you. I'm with you. I hope Nathaniel has answered your question on the Patriot Act. And I hope I've answered your question that you had about how can this militia group get inside the Capitol. They were on the steps of the Capitol, and that's bad enough.
Well, my concern, though, is that when there was a civil rights investigation of a killing or this type of white supremacist in all prior administrations since I've been an adult, it seemed like that you had some confidence that the federal official would try to take some action to protect American citizens. The weird thing about it now is that with the current AG being William Barr, and I saw where over 2,000 former U.S. attorneys said that he's unfit, should be removed, even his colleagues don't have any confidence in him. So the people who have intimate knowledge of the workings of the Justice Department says that this person is unfit, I got to agree with them. I've never seen anything like that in American history, that you had people from the Justice Department say that this person is so bad, we need to throw him out. It's unprecedented. And so the net result is when the callers talk about the Patriot Act, and you got to remember the FBI, Chris Wray, is like a lone wolf now. I noticed that he told the Senate and Congress that the Russian interference is a big problem, that we're taking steps to protect American citizens. Our president didn't seem to care for that. And I don't think that most people realize. And I was thinking that his position was so adverse to the president that he wouldn't be fired. I was thinking that he was going to be fired. The point is that there's not an incredible amount of justice that are coming out of the Justice Department as related to white supremacists. But fortunately, we do have somebody at the FBI who's paying attention. But I was looking at a story that's talking about the historical low numbers of diversity within the FBI. The FBI themselves has a sordid history of adverse treatment to African American. And I was watching a news story last night. We were talking about how low the numbers are now within the FBI. So their diversity number is down to like 3 or 4%, and which is incredible. And they have very few women and very few African Americans. So that's something that we have to work on with the next administration. We have to make sure that we get some diversity back into law enforcement at that high level. I think that's critical, because in order to have a democracy, folks, is a representative government. A representative government is for the people and by the people and with the people. So that means that folks of all backgrounds should be participant in government and how decisions are made. Communism, on the other hand, you have someone in charge who dictate what we see. Now, one of the most disturbing things that I've seen lately, Attorney Sweeney, is that this dialogue has been so reckless. They're talking about these fraudulent ballots, that the election is going to be stolen. And most people, and then much to my chagrin and my shock, I was doing a deposition this week. And so we were having a casual discussion when it came across that we did all these protective measures to make sure we had social separation. We set up the deposition so that we would be at least 10 feet apart. and we wore masks. And we videotaped the deposition for safety reasons. You know, we do take all these precautions. And then the court reporter, we was talking about these mechanisms, and one of the things said, man, they should have done this at the White House. Now they're a super spreader. I said, yeah, you know, it's irresponsible. Then the court reporter was saying, oh, that's a great man. They're trying to steal an election, and they've stolen like 20,000 votes already. And it just dawned on me that this misinformation campaign is a real deal. That in these various social media, we've now co-opted the Russian talking points, and the typical Americans are getting information through the internet and otherwise that have this false narrative. And I was saying, ma'am, in our state, there's only been one person I've known been prosecuted for voter fraud, and that was the Secretary of State guy, white Republican guy. You know, I mean, we don't have voter fraud in our state. Historically, that doesn't happen. So where do you get that from? You know, so we've had this process of electing people for the first time that I've ever known that somebody said our system is now corrupt here in our state.
Let me tell you, he's laying a foundation because he knows he's losing to contest the election. He's saying everything that he possibly can. He said, oh, wait a minute, mail-in ballots are fraudulent, and we don't want it done that way. We believe that people should stand in line at the voter centers. Yet what they're doing is they're in the African American community. The lines are wrapped around the block a couple of times, and so they're attempting to suppress the African American vote. And now they're saying we want a winner declared on the eve on the night of the election, so that you know, America can know who the winner is, and we can move on and get this behind us. Yet they know that the mail-in ballots will not be counted for several days after the election. They're doing everything they possibly can. And now Trump, the strong man, said during the debate a couple of weeks ago that his, quote, people will be out monitoring the elections, looking for fraud. He said that this is the most fraudulent thing already, that some mail-in ballots, my people saw some mail-in ballots in a dumpster. They were thrown away, and they all had my name on it. It's fraud. It's the greatest fraud in the history. So what he's doing is he's laying a foundation, just like this whole cure for coronavirus. He still has it. We know he does. But he's laying a foundation so his people, on the election night, when he loses the electoral college and the popular vote, he's going to say that this is the biggest fraud in the whole world. I don't think that we should let them get away with it. This is going to the Supreme Court, and we're going to decide, and we're going to have another election. And that's why, of course, he's rushing Amy Coney Barrett in her confirmation, so that she can sit in judgment over that. This is a hijacking of democracy, plain and simple. There is no, the hallmark of our democracy is a separation of powers. You got the executive branch, that is the president of the United States, with co-equal power to the legislative branch, that is the Senate and Congress. And then you have the judicial branch, that is the courts, the Supreme Court. Now the lines have been blurred, Nathaniel Lee. There is no separation of powers. Trump is in control of the Supreme Court if he lets this woman Barrett get confirmed, and the Justice Department is run by his puppet Barr. So democracy is gone. The separation of powers is gone under this guy's administration. It's very, very sad. And he tried to enlist the help of the military until the generals pushed it back, said we are apolitical. but he tried to take over the military and get them on his side. And that would have been the absolute collapse of this country. If the military, can you imagine, and he tried to do it or he did do it in Portland. He sent in unidentified military people from the Border Patrol with no name tags, no identifying uniforms, no identifying vehicles, just vans coming in. And it was like the Gestapo in Nazi Germany going in there. It was all, Trump had taken over the Border Patrol. And so he had them. And then he talked about, the motorcycle people from Sturgis, the Harley Davidson people. He said there are 100,000 strong, and they're mean, and the white supremacists. He really, really believes he's a dictator and he has this country, under control, under his control. But we will see. I mean, there are some decent people, even on the Republican side, who are now backing off from this guy, knowing that he's going to lose. He is running neck and neck in Florida. He has to win Florida. Otherwise, there's no chance, as you know, Nathaniel. Wisconsin and Michigan, who Hillary Clinton barely lost, they're about to flip. Other states are about to flip. Texas, can you believe that? Texas is a possibility that Democrats will get Texas. So he's going to be hopping around in one state on one foot looking for a supporter by the end of this thing, hopefully. So we're going to have a landslide, I believe, on November 3rd. We know we're going to get the popular vote like before by way more than 4 million like before. But I think we're going to get the Electoral College in the landslide too. And he can get on out of there. He can do whatever he wants, but come Inauguration Day in January, he better be out of that White House.
Okay, then we'll take one caller. Caller, you have a question for us today?
Yes, I have a. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a question. This is militia. I was just wondering how many people.
Can you speak up?
Hey, William, can you speak up, sir?
Who gives them the authority to act in America? Hello.
I can't hear you. You need to turn the volume up on your phone just a little bit.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit, but speak a little bit louder. How about that?
I just wanted to get this straight. What is how many people does it take to constitute a militia? Who gives them the authority to act? And if they do act, who can suppress the action that they take against the people?
Hey, producer, could you repeat what he said? Maybe you could hear him.
I didn't hear him.
Okay. Well, I apologize, caller. I didn't hear you, but I think he was talking about the authority to act. I thought you were talking about the militia group authority. I'm not really sure which authority he was seeking. So I apologize. I can't answer it. What you could do, you could send us a notice on Facebook, and I can respond because I can't hear what you're saying. I apologize. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our outstanding attorney, John Sweeney, today for participating in the show. I also like to thank you, our listeners. And don't forget, early voting is very important. I am doing early in-person voting this year. I've done mail-in ballots, but I'm not taking any chance this year. I'm really pushing hard. I'm even working with the people down in Florida. I'm funding a get out early vote physical appearance. The reason being is that the U.S. mail, and I sent letters downtown to other lawyers. It takes 4 or 5 days for a letter to go 3 blocks. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to go in and vote early. I want you to join us. We're going to, after we leave the show today, we're going to do early voting. Thank you, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Until then, may God bless and keep you and stay safe.